Welcome back once again to Shark Show. Glad you guys could join us. Today we're talking about Commissioner Court from December 8th. Dave Eagle, Commissioner Eagle, has the Great Barrington Declaration as an agenda item. And I'll tell you what, we had a lot of folks come out to speak on this. I think there was, 8 or 9?
Yeah, 8 or 9 of them. Ton of participation in this.
Yeah. Right, and some very conservative people. We had Melanie Graft that came out and spoke, and she spoke about the elective surgeries aspect of shutting down with Region E, GA 32 now, I guess it is, governor order. Governor order, not state legislature, but just governor. And we have Barbara Brashear, who is a precinct chair for Republican precinct chair.
Yeah.
And she had some really good comments. And we even had Commissioner-to-be Kevin Andrews came up to speak in favor of the Great Barrington Declaration. Robert Carter, who's a past Republican chair of Hood County. Nannette Samuelson, she got up to speak, and man, she did a great job. A very conservative constitutional person. Harold Granek got up to speak, and he's a Democrat precinct chair, and he spoke against the Great Barrington Declaration, I believe the only one. Christine Leftwich got up to speak, did a great job about talking about who the experts really are, right?
Right, who the real experts are.
Yeah, our forefathers, right?
Yeah,
We've got it in history, correct? And then Sharon Shelander, who's with the Republican Club Party, and she came up to speak. She gets up there almost every commissioner court to speak, does a great job. So we had some good patriots up there. And then later on, we had Steve Biggers. Mr. Biggers came up, and we'll show some clips from Mr. Biggers. Did a great job about hypocrisy, and we had a video a while back about the hypocrisy that's going on with the city and county right now in COVID. So moving along, I want to play the first clip that we have here of our county judge, our Hood County judge, telling us what he thinks of the shutdowns. Yeah. And this is his own words during this agenda item. Let's listen.
Well, let me tell you, first of all, I am opposed to shutting down any business in Hood County, period.
So he's against shutting anything down, any businesses. So we're done with this show. Shark Show out.
Hey, that's it.
It's a wrap, right?
We're good.
Shark Show out. We're done. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. Okay. Dr. Blocker is the public health authority, and Jay Webster coming in. And, you know, there's several clips in here where the judge, God bless the judge, you know, he says he's not going to shut anybody down, and then he turns around and says, but I'm not the expert.
Right.
We have to listen to the experts.
Yeah, it sounds like he's using the experts as his fallback crutch to get around being the bad guy here.
So you've got somebody that probably wants to be liked instead of doing the right thing.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Let's listen to another clip of the judge and speaking about, you know, our individual liberties and kind of see, like you said, the talk doesn't match the actions.
He says a lot of things that where this is his position, this is where he stands. He's for individual liberties. He doesn't want to shut businesses down, but then there's no action to back up those words.
And let's listen to this clip.
And I want our individual liberties. I don't want anybody taking my individual liberties. I can guarantee you that. And anyway, having said all of that, now Dr. David Blocker is here, who is Hood County's health authority, to come up.
He doesn't want anybody taking his individual liberties away. Of course, he did in March. And then he goes on to say, I don't want it. I don't want these liberties taken away. But here's Dr. Blocker, our health authority.
Yeah. To take your liberty away.
Yes. And that's what's coming up, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Blocker. And speaking of Dr. Blocker, he does give us some information about where he stands on our sense of personal liberties.
Where we are now, the U.S. now has known as the world leader as far as active cases of coronavirus and new cases of coronavirus. And I think a lot of that goes back to our sense of personal liberties and our desire to continue to do and follow what we would normally be doing as everyone gets fatigued and tired of this coronavirus pandemic.
So not only is the U.S. leading all the nations because we test more than anything. Texas, we're above 11.1 or 2 million tests now. But our sense of personal liberties, if you look at the word sense, it's a feeling of that something is the case. So I feel now, not that I don't have, personal liberties, because the Constitution gives us that, right?
Right.
Yeah, God
But
does.
according to him, but according to Blocker, that's just a feeling, and we should do what the public health authorities, what the norm or normal thing should do.
Yeah, and it's the same thing we're seeing at the national levels here at the local level. Dr. Fauci comes in and he says, hey, this is what we need to do, and if you don't do it, you're kind of a jerk. Dr. Blocker's message that day was, hey, this is what you need to do. Liberties are secondary right now. And, it's funny, he left out how many tests we're doing in his little spiel. He said the United States is the leading place for coronavirus. No one's testing like we are.
No, not a bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's simple mathematics. The more you test, the more people that get tested, the more positive cases you're going to find. It's just simple mathematics. That doesn't mean that we're necessarily really, truly leading the world. We just test more than anybody else.
Right. And if you look at, the judge says, bring in the experts, and he lists the experts as Dr. Blocker because he has a degree, and the judge also says if you have a scientific degree, then you're an expert. Well, everybody sitting up there should be an expert on the Constitution and at least know what it means.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't remember reading anywhere in the Constitution that it's null and void if there's a pandemic. Our constitutional rights are our constitutional rights regardless. Those don't go away.
But and they don't. And what we're getting from the judge and most of the court, except for Commissioner Eagle, is we've got to listen to the experts. And our experts are Fauci on the national level, who hasn't gone over new data since March. And then it goes down to Dr. Hellistat, who is the state of Texas, doctor that Governor Greg Abbott's listening to. And then it goes to Dr. Blocker, and there's a couple doctors in between. But these are the people we're listening to that are talking about we have a feeling of our individual liberties.
Yeah.
And that they don't exist because we have this pandemic and it's something new.
Yeah.
There are certain experts that the judge goes by, and they're definitely in favor of this Jon Snow report.
Right.
But tell us about the Barrington Declaration that's actually on the agenda.
Right. So this Great Barrington Declaration, we talked about it in a previous episode, and if you want to go and read it again, it's at gbdeclaration.org. And there's experts, public health experts that have signed onto this as well. I believe on the Jon Snow, there was, I believe Dr. Blocker said about 7,000 health experts or public health experts on that one, and there's over 12,000 on this one. So there's definitely different viewpoints out there as how to handle a pandemic among the experts themselves. Dave Eagle actually put on for Commissioner's Court to address today.
And you're talking about Dr. Blocker and the Jon Snow issue versus the Great Barrington Declaration. Dr. Blocker goes on to talk about not only the guidelines and the measurable social guidelines, but enforcing the guidelines.
So it's finding that balance, right, between, at whatever level of society do we do this. So in the case of businesses, the current recommendation is to limit the number of people in a given business or the number of tables open at a given restaurant to 50%. We're not closing it down. The recommendation is not to close it down. The recommendation is not to take that business away, but it is to put a measurable social guideline in place. Again, it's measurable, but it's also enforceable, right?
So when you start to enforce something, that's not a guideline anymore. That's a law that has not been enacted by the legislature, yet he's talking, and he's the expert with the judge about enforcement.
Right. And who's going to be the people enforcing that?
That would probably be Hood County Sheriff Roger Deeds, and he's been really silent on this issue all year. We don't really know where he stands on it, and I hope that he would choose not to enforce anything like this.
But we don't know at this time if the rest of the court's going to go with this John Snow report, and you have your public health authority talking about enforcement. So does that mean that, Dr. Blocker is saying with enforcement, meaning he wants the sheriff to go out and do something about this?
It certainly sounds that way.
So where does the judge stand, and why wasn't this brought up when he said enforcement? So now we have an enforcement aspect of this.
Yeah, and there was a lot of ambiguity through yesterday's meeting. A lot of mixed messages this whole year. At first they did the shutdown, and then they did the resolution saying we're not going to do it again. Now we're here again with a shutdown. We've got Dr. Blocker talking about enforcement, and the county commissioners court haven't laid out anything, unlike the Ellis County judge did.
No, and you have Commissioner Dave Eagle, you have incoming Commissioner Kevin Andrews that spoke about it and wants the Barrington Declaration. Other than that, we haven't heard a peep out of anybody. So now we bring up enforcement, and that should heighten everybody's awareness on where this is going here later in the year. So we need to hear from our county sheriff. We've heard from our county attorney, Matt Mills, but let's hear back from Judge Massengale and Sheriff Roger Deeds on where they stand on enforcement, because this is something very important to the citizens and the business owners at this time.
Yeah, and we deserve to know what's going to happen. What's going to happen if Lift the Bar Fitness says, we're not going to do your 50%.
Right, or some doctor says, we are going to do elective surgeries and we're not going to follow GA 32. I want to highlight, we talked about earlier, I want to highlight Mr. Biggers.
Yeah.
And some of the things he says about hypocrisy, like we said in our other videos. But he says this straight, flat out, to the commissioner's court. Let's listen to him.
Sir, here. I didn't fill out the form because I was really...
Well, why didn't you fill out a form?
Say again?
Why didn't you fill out a form?
Because I was just going to observe today, and then once all
Okay,
the
well,
observations...
it's almost noon, so go ahead. I'm going to let you speak.
And I'll go really quick. You can even start my timer. But I've listened to all this, and the decision today is going to stress economically people in our community. That's exactly what this is about, rolling it back. If you want to roll it back 50%, what the governor wants to do. We can argue all day long whether the governor's order is lawful or not lawful, and that's where we're trying to guidelines here. We're going to have to follow the governor's order. But here's the hypocrisy that I see here. I see people saying 6 foot. I see people saying wear a mask. I see the doc over here sitting without a mask, gets up to talk, puts his mask on, hands you a cartoon, no gloves, nothing like that, and hands that to you, puts his mask on in a room that's circulating air from here to there to here, and most of these people don't have masks on. If you truly were concerned about the community, truly, and not filling out paperwork and saying, look at the paperwork we filled out, and we have $2.5 million now because we followed the guidelines and the rules of the governor. If you were truly concerned, you wouldn't let one person walk in this room without a mask on.
And there you have it in a nutshell. Thank you, Mr. Biggers. The total hypocrisy of the doctor, and I think he may be talking about not Blocker, but the Democrat chair, who took a mask off, gave the cartoon, had him pass it around up on the dais, and then came back and didn't follow all the instructions he even came up to talk about and speak about. So Mr. Biggers did a great job, and this is before even Dave Eagle, Commissioner Eagle, gets a chance to talk.
Yeah, and one of the points Biggers brought up was that, hey, the $2.5 million that the judge keeps touting, is that the only reason why we did the lockdowns? Because the judge is saying he doesn't want them, but Biggers makes a point.
That money seems to be a big deal to the judge, and he keeps bringing it up, like you said. So it makes me believe that that's what this is really all about. It's not really about the people of Hood County and what's best for them. This is about getting more money for the county from taxpayer dollars.
Right, it is taxpayers, and it comes from the CARES Act, and it comes from the federal government, handed down to the states to divvy out, and it goes by population, so it's not some big mystical, magical thing that Jay Webster's done for the county. He's a worker just like everybody else, and the money was coming irregardless of whether, we had Jay or didn't have Jay. But yes, he put the paperwork together for the judge to sign. So CARES Act money was coming in. I think a lot of times that government people kind of get into that situation of, we need the money, we need the money, we need the money. And it's our money they're trying to capture, correct?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, whether they take it from the front or back pocket, it's still taxpayer money.
Yeah, and they may need the money, but the people need their jobs.
Yeah, and that was, great job, Mr. Biggers, on pointing out the hypocrisy, not just overall, but in the room where this meeting is actually going on. Finally, we're getting to the point, this is an hour and 45 minutes long, we're maybe an hour and 22 minutes into it, and Commissioner Eagle, who placed this on the agenda, finally gets to speak.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, and that's really abnormal, because typically when a commissioner puts something on the agenda, they get to open the discussion about it. And what we saw that day was political maneuvering. He was shot down once or twice during this process. It shouldn't have taken an hour and 15, 20 minutes for Commissioner Eagle to talk about that.
And if you look at the agenda item, I think one of the first ones Commissioner Cotton had, and the judge asked if anybody wants to speak on it, and Commissioner Cotton just kind of took over, which he should have.
Right, it's his agenda item.
Yeah, and followed up and said, hey, we have this person, and kind of ran that agenda item. But when Commissioner Eagle gets up to speak, you have the judge saying, hey, time out, we got to get our people first. Where's Dr. Blocker? We can't find him. I'll read the letter for you. And then we have Commissioner Juan Devers leaning over the dais saying, oh, wait, before we do that, Judge, aren't we supposed to, helping the judge out, kind of push back Dave Eagle?
Okay, so everybody that wanted to speak has had an opportunity to speak.
Except me. Except the person that introduced the, can I speak?
Before we do this, does Jay need to comment on any of this?
That's what I was just saying. I mean, I've got a letter here.
And did you notice, if you're watching this and you're in Precinct 2, your commissioner said nothing for an hour and 45 minutes.
Total silence.
He might as well have been absent.
Yeah.
Just take him off the dais. Nothing. No comment, no nothing. So if you're in Precinct 2, at least call your commissioner up and say, hey, where do you stand on this? Other than him not seconding the Great Barrington Declaration, you had Commissioner 3 speak up, ask Blocker some questions. So, MIA for Commissioner Precinct 2.
Completely MIA.
Yeah.
So let's segue into finally Commissioner Dave Eagle when he gets to speak.
Yeah.
Now, once again, I got headed off at the pass on my agenda item. This happened to me back in March. And I don't know what the people are afraid of hearing me say, but it was interesting that I got headed off again. But here's what I know. When they want you to wear a mask when you walk into a restaurant, but yet when you sit down to eat you can take it off, that's insanity. When you go through a drive-through window and they take your money with their bare hands, but they hand you your drink in a little container deal, that's insanity. When city leaders roll out their Granbury Love campaign about wearing a mask, yet those same city leaders dress to the nines and go to the Jewel Ball and not a one of them wear a mask, that's insanity and hypocrisy.
So Commissioner Eagle comes in, shooting both barrels on exactly what's going on, picking up where Mr. Biggers left off, correct?
Yeah, he did a great job at pointing out the hypocrisy and how none of this makes any sense. Guys, if you're watching this and you've been keeping up with it all year, like I'm sure you have, none of this is making any sense.
It doesn't take much to see what's really going on here and how some of these rules and regulations are just absurd. And also, speaking on that, with lockdown restrictions and cutting businesses back, they say it's to stop the spread and stop the number of people catching COVID. But isn't that one of the ways that we reach the end point here, which would be herd immunity?
Right. And Dave Eagle, Commissioner Eagle, speaks about that as he goes into the Great Barrington Declaration. And let's hear a small clip of, what he's talking about here.
And his last point was herd immunity, because this was one of the criticisms in the John Snow memorandum as was a strategy, and he said herd immunity is not a strategy. He said herd immunity is just the natural endpoint. And the question is, how do we get there? John Snow memorandum's got the let's restrict. And the Great Barrington Declaration says let's focus on folks who are vulnerable and let non-vulnerable people go back and live their lives. Because sooner or later we got to get to herd immunity. So the conclusion generally on the Great Barrington Declaration was to focus our resources that we've got on the vulnerable population. The non-vulnerable population, go back to living your life and get the government out of it.
And, that's, like we said before on the herd immunity, Commissioner Eagle, talks about that and explains between John Snow and the Great Barrington Declaration. So if you would, Courtney, give information to the people where they could read and look at both. Yeah,
so if you want to go and look at each one, the Great Barrington Declaration, it's at gbdeclaration.org. And then the John Snow is at johnsnowmemo.com. And you can go read for yourself the different strategies. There's a lot of similarities, but then there's also some differences there, and mainly the focus protection being the main one.
Right. And, we've heard from the so-called experts today as we wrap up. And, we've heard from the people who are, in my opinion, the experts, and they give the money and everything, right? And that's our government that the Commissioner Court should be, listening to, not the total experts, right?
Yeah.
Public health authorities. So, take their advice, judge and commissioners, and take the people's advice and go from there. You have a solution. You pass a resolution as a Commissioner's Court. You can use that as your solution, but you don't. Mm-hmm. You can use the Constitution as your solution, but you're not. And here's a new solution for you. The Ellis County judge put out a message to his county, Ellis County, and it's a 4 or 5 paragraph letter. And in the 4th paragraph down, Ellis County says, "It's not my job to enforce someone else's edict. Our community is made up of resilient men and women who work every day to keep our county great." And he goes into talk about small businesses and him being a small business owner because he understands what it means to shut these places down.
Yeah.
So he's not going to enforce the edict of GA 32. So maybe they've got their sheriff on board. Maybe they have their county attorney on board. Who knows? But here's another solution.
Yeah, there's a perfect example of how to handle it.
It's a good show of leadership.
Oh, excellent show of leadership. And of course he ends with, "May God continue to watch over and lead us during these trying times. May God bless Ellis County." We could get a copy of this to our Commissioner's Court. Maybe they'll do something. But, what are the odds? I mean, they have a resolution. They haven't followed it, right?
Yeah, they passed that unanimously back in June, and it's time to put up or shut up.
Yeah, we've got solutions on the table, but they don't want to see those solutions. They want to go with the public health authority. They want the money, money, money. And to heck with everybody else, we're just going to have to follow and shut you all down. Isn't that how you see it?
That's how I see it, unfortunately, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Guys, we appreciate you watching this video. If you would, like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and be sure to share this video.
And once again, Commissioner Court, you have solutions. Please look at those 3 solutions and adopt one of those. We would like it. The people would like it. And Shark Show out.